was one of the women that burned their bra. I have a bra on today just to be nice.
You burned your bra?
Yeah, part of the feminist movement in New York. We went to the Statue of Liberty and we burned our bras.
Why?
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. It takes my breath away that that's not obvious.
Today we're here with women who identify as being both feminine and feminist women. We're here today to talk and have conversations where these women will open up about their lives and their journeys, and we can hopefully connect to be able to understand one another as women. Welcome to The Bridge. To start us off today, our first prompt is, I agree with traditional gender roles.
So for me, yes, I am someone that does believe in traditional gender roles. However, I don't feel like everything has to be set in stone. But however, do I believe that a man should be the provider? Absolutely. That's something that I know that works for me, and I believe we all have choice power. So having children eventually one day, I want to be able to have the option of maybe not working, and that being okay.
Thank you.
You know, we're two genders. But I think in the past, that demarcation line between people fulfilling roles, I think that's gotten blurred. And it's been to our advantage as women, because by having that very strong delineation between this is what a man does and this is what a woman does, we have surrendered a lot of power as women. So I think it's important that we take that power back. If that means that we have to function in the world taking on somewhat of a man's role, then we do it, and we have done it. And I think by doing that, we have empowered ourselves, and because of that, we are better role models for our daughters and for young women.
What do you mean when you say power?
Power is, in other words, we're not subservient. We, have our own earning power, we have our place in the world, we're making a contribution, we're not just being the nurturing person that sits at home raising children, we're doing much more than that.
Options and equality. That's power.
I was interested to hear you talk about going back to traditional roles. I don't know which tradition you want to go back to, but I come from the women's movement from the 70s, and of course that's almost the second iteration. The women's movement started in 1848, and we're talking about a period of time where women's lives were totally, you couldn't inherit the money. You meant that if you didn't get married, you were an old maid, and there weren't any other options. So when you go back to tradition, I don't know how far back you're going, but I do know that if we keep the roles the way that they had been in the past, there's been a lot of abuse for women. Mm-hmm. The women from the 1970s, they looked very militant, and I understand that young women of today find those kinds of feminists off-putting because they feel that they have somehow buried what they feel is their gentler nature. There's a kind of rebellion about it now, and I respect that and I understand where it's coming from. But we, as the old feminist, the old women's movement, set the stage so that you now have the choices. And when you say you want to go back to traditional roles, I don't think you mean to go back to the time when women had no choices.
Mm-hmm. So Aisha, what do you mean by going back to traditional gender roles?
Certainly, I am not a fan of having zero options, zero choices. Do I think that women should not vote and we should go back? No, I do not support that in any capacity. I support women having, equal rights to pay. I'm for gender equality in terms of women, making as much money as men do. Everyone's household is different. Not everyone even has a man to even rely on. And so, yeah, I think that it's fair to say, yeah, you should be making whatever money you're qualified to be making. So when I speak about traditional gender roles, I'm talking about the knowing of who's playing what role specifically. There's always a masculine and feminine energy, and I would prefer for my man to have that masculine energy. For me, as to where it stands, it solely means a man being a provider and being okay with that. I also am in an interesting space myself because I'm very feminine, but I also do work. And so what does that look like? How do I strike the balance? I know that for me, I don't want someone to tell me necessarily, no, you cannot work at all under no circumstances, but I want options.
Do you think that there are some women who might feel that the oppression in their eyes was protection from things that they did not want to be involved with, and that perhaps by opening that door has forced them to do things that they now have to do?
I think by not wanting to be standing up for yourself, you're basically taking on a child's role. And what you're saying is you take care of me, you provide, you do what I need to do, when everyone's fully capable of taking care of themselves. And by not doing that, you relinquish, again, back to the word power. Power is not only income. Power is standing up for yourself, doing what you feel is right, making your own choices. We're fully capable as women to do the same types of jobs, to do a lot of the things that men do. It's just a question of reprogramming our minds and knowing that we have the ability to do something.
My view of feminism is a little different. It includes men. I want equality. I don't want equality for the women here. I want equality for us.
When you say us, you're talking about men and women?
Everyone.
Everyone.
Everyone, of course. I have grandsons. I have granddaughters. I want their life to be one where they know they're going into that job and they may or may not get it because of their qualifications. If we had time for a conversation, I would have a long conversation with you about, as my friend mentioned, if you really wanted to live in those time periods, oh my goodness, it would be destructive. My sense of what you said, the man in your life doesn't have the options that you want. He gets to be the provider. He gets to be the male and have the male energy, and that's his job. You, on the other hand, get to be feminine and have all the choices to work or to not work or to be or to not be. I hope that he gets to be masculine and he gets to be in charge and he gets to be a forceful human being in whatever his view or her view is of masculinity, and that she gets to wear the high heels and be as feminine as she wishes. And it doesn't mean that either one of them don't know how to use a hammer, and it doesn't mean that either one of them doesn't change the diaper, because they want to. That's who they are as people. And that's the merging I want to see for my kid.
So that brings me to my next point. Women should prioritize family over career.
I think that women have done that in the past, and they found themselves lost for their own, they had no self-identity. As a consequence, they, went through a lot of depression and felt very unfulfilled. And I think this thing about men and women, gender roles, it's like we're all human beings and we all have gifts and we all have talents, and it's up to us to figure out what and how we want to contribute them to the world. And so by doing that, we find our place in the world.
So do you think women are more prone to being better nurturers to children?
I think men can also nurture children as well. There are plenty of single fathers. In fact, when you mentioned earlier about, a man with a hammer or a woman with a hammer, I think, we all have the ability to do multi-things.
So you don't think that some of that is more nature versus nurture in terms of a woman's ability?
If it's inherent?
Correct.
I think that it is part of women's nature. However, men can learn it too. And that's what feminism has taught men.
I know you talked about women and their need for fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that being a mother is fulfilling?
I think being an attorney is fulfilling. Being a doctor is fulfilling. Being, a mother could be fulfilling for somebody. Being whatever, whatever you label yourself as is fulfilling.
How do the children benefit or
I think
suffer from?
By being a role model and going out into the world and then coming home, and when your children then come home and spending your evenings together, I think then they see that they can do something, and you're showing your daughters in particular that they have the ability to also have a career and have a family.
When the woman is going out to work and getting the fulfillment she needs, who is taking care of her children? If her husband also wants to go to work.
Right. There, people based on their own individual life and their lifestyles, they find alternatives. A nanny, or whether they stay with a grandparent, or whether they're in school and, you know, they've got someone to pick them up, take them to, you know, their activities. But what's important there is that they find a way. Families, you know, usually find their own individual ways of handling those types of things. But I think what's most important is that a woman claim her right to also be out in the workforce, and that she's doing something that gives her a sense of fulfillment.
Not every woman necessarily wants a child.
Right.
And I know in my own circle of 4 women who are young and are making the decision that that is not for them, and it's happening more and more. But I really think that somewhere children's rights should be considered. So it takes 2 to make a child, and there should be a commitment about bringing that child, and it should come from both of them. And there is probably a biological part where, since a woman carries the child, she's probably more attached to the child when they're born. But after 2 or 3 years, sometimes it's the father that's the, and I know situations like that, they've stepped into the parenting role and the mother has moved back. So that's because it's fluid today. I mean, in my generation, that would probably have been unheard of. But since we're giving people these choices, I think that it's very difficult to generalize like that. And every individual, including men, have a right. And I think to assign men the provider role is to put a yoke on them. It's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. And I know men who've held down jobs that they're miserable in because they're supporting a mortgage and a wife and, you know, 2 children. And that also is as unfair as keeping a woman home without having any kind of expression about who she is.
So one, just feminine, masculine energy, to me is much different than rights. I'm blessed to grow up in a situation where I now have those rights because of the efforts that women before me made, right? So now when it comes to the prioritizing of like family or career, that is the key. We have choice. We have choices. I think what a lot of women have to go deeper into is both are going to have pros and cons. And it comes with self-awareness of who you are, what's ultimately going to fulfill you. You can have it all, but not all at once. So if you're going to pursue a career, then it may not come with the relationship with your kids. So I think ultimately women just have to understand, what am I okay with and what's going to fulfill me, because we have the beauty of so many choices.
In this world and what we see today, do you believe that women should prioritize their family over their careers?
I can't say should, because that's their journey to walk. I don't think that it's women or men. I do believe that women have more of a nurturing spirit. I want to operate in my strengths, right? And I believe that a man most likely wants to operate in his strengths. But then you have circumstance. Then you have lifing. So even with the gender roles, you have certain strengths to fill those roles, and I have certain strengths to fill other roles, but they're going to swap, they're going to intertwine, they're going to go up and down and all around. So I can't say what they should do, but I think it's more so the unit, what works for you guys, and ultimately what is going to fulfill you in the end. Yeah.
All right, you're a feminist, you just don't know. That's where it is, exactly. First of all, I think it should be a bumper sticker. You can have it all, just not all at the same time. And I'm looking at women who, forgive me for saying these horrible words, you're going to live to be 100. Plus, I mean, really. You're not hampered as we were by thinking, got to get out of college, got to get the kids, oh my Lord, definitely have to have them by 30.
And did you work during that time, or were you at home?
I did work. Well, okay. When I was married, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I didn't remarry, so I was a single mom. And yes, I was a respiratory therapist. There's a lot of holidays I was not home. Didn't have that option, had to pay the rent.
But you would have liked to have been home.
Everybody wants to be home.
Not everybody.
I mean, well, yeah, there you go, see?
No, not everybody.
So I'll go. I'm Maggie, and I'll be 50 next year. I do believe that we can have it all, but not at the same time. But I think what is important is that we are not equal. we are equally valued, but I think we are very different. And I think what can be confused is that we have a natural biology that we are born with. And I agree with choice. I also have advanced degrees, I've been an executive and all of that, but my proudest moments are having been a wife and mother. And for me, I want a masculine man. I have a masculine man. And what I tell the young women that I teach is that a masculine man requires a feminine woman. He is not going to compete with you. And that's the mistake that I made that cost me my first marriage, thinking that my big job, thinking that all of my accomplishments mattered in my relationship. They do not. What helps you in the corporate world can absolutely hurt you in the relationship that you want. So what I tell ladies is that you have to choose. Unless you can code switch and do both at the same time, it's very difficult, but you're going to have to choose. And the last thing that I would say is I don't think that we have all the time that we want if family is a priority because of that biology. I was married at 25, and we were able to have the kids in my 30s, but I had the relationship set. What I see a lot of young women doing is prioritizing career and then having that oh no moment, and they're scrambling. So I say absolutely work with your husband and find out what's best for your family, but go ahead and get that relationship settled out of the way. It's going to be so much harder for you for the kind of man that I think most women want.
Would you like to add to that?
When it comes to family, every family dynamic is different. And when it comes to especially each person serving their role within their family unit, it's important that the center of it is love. It's all situational, and it depends on what you feel serves you and as well as the other person when you come together.
The next prompt is that feminism and femininity are contradictory. Does anyone like to speak to that?
I think this is a different time. I think that when we started out looking at the difference in roles, we didn't see them so much as contradictory. But I think that what has happened, 50 years hence, is that the feminist movement has somehow, the women's movement became kind of villainized because they looked as if they were denying their femininity. But I think that was part of the process of taking back their power.
Right.
So now you have these, I call them New Age women, who are very concerned about their ability to express what they feel are feminist traits. And so today, listening to all of you, I don't think they're so contradictory, because I think you want the privilege of, and you also want the powers that go with a woman who fully expresses herself and has rights.
Well, one thing that I have noticed in terms of what you're sharing is that women who identify as being feminine maybe don't want to do some of the things, maybe saying, okay, a man and a woman can do the same job. And a feminine woman would say, absolutely not. I'm not interested in doing that, nor can I do it, nor am I built to do that. And oftentimes we'll see women who identify as feminists saying, I don't enjoy taking care of my appearance and taking care of my husband, and I don't agree with these things. I do think that there is a pretty big division when women are talking about things that are important to them in terms of what is truly more important or more valuable depending on the woman.
I agree.
Well, in terms of you talked about taking care of yourself. Coming from where I came, we saw the beauty game as being something that was imposed on us. I come from the generation where women were still wearing corsets. Often I look at very high heels and I see them as torture instruments. So that is, for me, not a way to express your femininity. And I think that, the amount of money that people spend on cosmetics becomes an industry which, how can I put this, which suppresses women in the fact that it requires women to spend a lot of time on themselves. And I'm not sure that that's a good use of your time, or that is a good way to grow and understand yourself. So from that perspective, I guess there would be a difference.
First of all, let's just take now, which I did not believe in or belong to because actually a family. And I would not support that.
What is a now meeting?
Now, oh my gosh, I love that. National Organization of Women.
Oh, okay, you're talking big. I thought you were talking about like something in
Now,
a school.
yeah.
Okay.
And I will say, I was one of the women that burned their bra. I have a bra on today just to be nice.
You burned your bra?
Yeah, part of the feminist movement in New York.
Back
We
in
went
the
to the Statue of Liberty and we burned our bras.
Why?
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Takes my breath away that that's not obvious. Could you answer the why to that?
I believe you all burned your bras because you felt it restrictive, just like cosmetics, and imposed on you, and attractive to men, which is something repulsive, which I think is beautiful, but I think that's the reason why you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that was kind of the sort of a statement. It's like, what would be wrong if I was sitting here and my boobs were down here?
Wouldn't you be uncomfortable?
I mean, that's just where they go. That's real. It was a symbol.
I see.
I did have a couple of questions for Judith. Did you say that there was no child care at the National Organization of Women's meeting?
Yeah, is that outrageous?
Yes. Is there a reason why?
I believe it's because it was an extremely classist organization,
Okay.
and which is humorous to me because most of those women were very feminine, and they had the time and the ability to not have to worry about childcare. They weren't concerned with the lower class, they were concerned with the upper class.
Wonderful. I have one more question, if I may. I understand the choice to wear what you want to wear and appear how you want to appear. My question would be, do you think that men do things to attract women that make them uncomfortable?
Yes, I definitely do. So I think that we're all affected by this. Everyone is.
So one thing I wanted to share is that there are some women who identify as being feminine women who actually feel more fulfilled and more confident and happier with themselves when they are doing things like putting on makeup, wearing a bra, or getting a breast lift because they want to, because it makes them look beautiful, or going to the spa because they want to relax. They don't want to work 12 hours. Some of these things women enjoy doing for themselves.
This is not controlled by necessarily men or women. The issue is someone telling us and us believing
Okay,
that brown's the color of the year.
I see, okay.
That short skirts versus long skirts.
I taught school for years, and kids would tell me, as I saw styles change, oh, I wear what I want to wear. And I would always say to them, it's funny, I don't see anybody in class wearing a toga. I mean, because they weren't living 2,000 years ago when togas were fashionable. Even though we live in the context of a society, and while we make some decisions, our decisions are made by what we have around us. And some of those decisions are manipulated, which is what Judy is trying to talk about.
Right.
Madison Avenue.
exactly.
Hey, this is big money. You're talking about the fashion industry, you're talking about makeup industry, you're talking about plastic surgeons. I mean, they have, we're talking billions of dollars. I understand where people coming from themselves, if they have this decision to make, I can see why they make it. But I think that they really need to understand that they're living in a context, and it's in that context that you make your life.
Well, and I think that femininity isn't, the definition isn't makeup or cosmetics, because I agree, there's always an agenda, and consumption is a whole nother topic.
Right.
But femininity is feeling good about yourself. Femininity is feeling beautiful. That's with or without makeup. I do think it is considering how you want to present yourself to the world. It's up to women to decide what is going to ultimately make you feel confident. And I do also believe a lot of women hide behind all those things. That's why plastic surgery is a billion-dollar business, because you're not okay with ultimately who you are and you want to change certain things. But if those things didn't exist, you wouldn't be able to change them. So I think no matter what, you have to accept yourself. But as a woman, if doing your hair makes you feel good and puts that smile on your face, then you do that. And if putting a smile on your face is keeping the messy bun and you're okay with no one worried about you, then great, like, or whatever that looks like. But I do think they're different things. I don't think makeup makes you feminine. I don't think your hair makes you feminine. These are all energies and things that we possess, and there's certain ways to enhance them for yourself.
So do you believe that women are more fulfilled when they are living in their femininity?
Depends on the woman. But I do believe for the most part, like, women have a larger feminine energy, and when we live in that, we're gonna feel more fulfilled and purposeful and kind of reach our higher potential. This is essentially a world that was built by men. It's a masculine world. So that's what I was getting back to with the pendulum of, we see the main contradiction ultimately within our relationship, because that's where it's masculine versus feminine. All these masculine traits don't necessarily hurt you in the masculine world because you're playing the masculine game. But I think women have feminine traits, and femininity powers also can help you elevate in a masculine world, because at the end of the day, they're men, you know? So we're all trying to find that.
I think one area that affects women greatly that are in the masculine world is that they are struggling with being in their feminine at home. So they are burned out.
Yeah.
They are stressed out. They don't know how to relax. They don't know how to say no.
Now, I personally believe that my feminine energy isn't something I turn off. I think a lot of women have turned on the masculine energy to play the masculine game. But I ultimately feel like I get further in my feminine energy than in my masculine energy. So a lot of women are burnt out because they're code switching and going back and forth, and I'm not just getting to be me or ultimately where I feel comfortable.
All the points that you made, amazing. When you look at yourself in the mirror, how do you feel about yourself? And I feel like that's where that feminine side kind of kicks in more. It's like, what am I going to do to treat myself? And everything else, it's an extra, it's a bonus. The energy I have, it's because I feed myself that energy and then I give it out into the world. I'm able to treat others better because I treat myself good too.
Feminism is a world where we're not walking out there and facing masculine power. That's equality.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
I was going to add to that, it is about what, and we have mentioned this word several times, individual choice. I recently was asked by someone I was dating to go to a sports bar. I have absolutely no interest in sports. And he says, well, there's women there. I'm like, fine, let them go. I'm not going to go. There's no reason for me to be there. I mean, what would I do? I'd probably want to sit there and read a book.
Was it a date?
No, he just wanted me to participate because he wanted to see, some game. And, personally in my own life, I was raised with a lot of men, a lot of male cousins, 2 brothers. My father only had brothers. My mother only had brothers. My dad, my brothers, none of them were into sports.
Are you still dating him?
No. I was married to somebody who was also very creative, so it's like, I have no interest.
Did he ever go anywhere you wanted to go?
Yeah, he did. But I did not want to go.
So you weren't willing to go just for him? Not because it's not something that interests you, but you were not willing to make that?
There's nothing about the vibe that I like. Sports bar, not for me.
Did you like him?
Yes, I did, to a certain point, but did I try to change that part of him? No. Did I accept that part of him? Yes. Was I going to change myself to be with him, to do that? No.
That doesn't mean that she wouldn't go to a sports bar if he said, please.
Well, it
We're
depends.
making
I
this.
don't think she would go.
I don't think
Well,
so.
I think she might, but the point is, she's telling you she
saying,
wouldn't.
she's saying, and some things are just completely
I guess
outside of here.
that's the difference to me. That's the feminine energy of, of course, well, I don't want to go, I don't go. But
Exactly.
there's
Exercising.
still situations where any relationship, my friendships, where I'll go.
It's a give and take.
Oh,
Well,
no.
that depends on the level
would
of
not.
relationship that
Well,
you want.
yeah.
So I also want to add that each generation symbolizes something,
Yeah.
right? So, you guys coming from a generation of fighting for our rights, in my generation, it's about exercising all those options of those rights. So we're living in the privilege of that, and I'm very aware of that. Me doing my makeup and all these different things, that is me exercising my ability to do whatever I want. And it makes me feel really, really good. But I understand that with everything, there's again, the pendulum swing of a rebellion. Oh, you want me to do this? Well, I'm gonna do this, oh, you invented bras? No bra, you know what I mean? So I even remember free the nipple was a thing at one point. Even actually the generation that is below me, I noticed how they dress. Like we have, as millennials, the skinny jeans and all these different things, and the Gen Zs, they're into like baggy, no makeup, very relaxed, very casual, or some of them dress in a different era.
Yes.
Just those comparisons alone, it's like, I remember thinking when I was younger, like, you kind of wanted your jeans to be tight to like get a guy to look at you. So it's like interesting now with the Gen Zs, it's like you can get a guy wearing the biggest and the baggiest thing. You can actually wear his outfit and you will still get him. I look at stuff like that and I'm like, it's all about, you know, what our generation stands for and where we come from that allows us to exercise what those choices are. And I think specifically with millennials, we have a fascination with taking it back into certain time, you know, and eras of, oh my gosh, like what was life like as like a housewife and what does that look like, you know? We tend to play into those types of things. I just know that for me, I love to exercise like the ability to be, you know, just a woman. Marilyn Monroe, she said, it's okay if it's a man's world as long as she can be a woman in it.
And I think that's kind of the pendulum swinging is that women, I think, feel like they didn't have the right to be feminine because it seems like you only have value if you have a job, if you have a degree. What if they just want to be a mom? Is that okay? Are they going to be looked down upon because they don't have a title? Is that title not worthy? And I think that what's beautiful now is that people are starting to see that they can have that. And it is okay as a woman to be able to live.
Just because you brought her up, she also said a woman can rule anything as long as she has the right shoes.
Well, I agree with that.
I wanted to add
There you
that
are.
she died under very suspicious circumstances because she was exploited by the
She was.
national leadership of men. She really spells exploitation.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I liked the quote just as like
And I
quirky
think she
context,
is,
but I by
she's
no
got
means
some
I
powerful
do
woman.
understand. Like, again, it also just highlights the fact that beauty is power and beauty is currency. And if you're unaware of that, it is easy to get exploited. Tragically, in her case, like we know that she may not have understood that due to her upbringing. You know, she
Well, it
didn't
was
even.
also a different period. It was
Yeah.
the 1950s.
Yeah.
And the best that a woman could hope for is that she would be beautiful and attract a lot of male attention.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of very glamorous jobs for her at that point.
Yeah.
The choices she made were limited by the period she lived in.
Yes.
And that's why the women's movement was so important, because today you're not confined to the kinds of roles that she was, and you don't have to make the kinds of decisions she made.
As we're wrapping up this conversation, our final prompt is that if you are a woman, you should be a feminist. And I want to hear from each of you ladies about how you came to the realization that you identified as being a feminine woman or being a feminist personally.
Me personally, I think I came to that realization when I knew I was always going to have to take care of myself, and that I had the power and the option to always say no to whatever it was that I did not like, whether it's not going to a sports bar or who I married and the profession that I have, and the ability to exercise my own voice. So that's when I became aware of who I am and what I stand for.
As for me, I feel like I came more to femininity when I had realized that I had built up a tougher exterior, and at the time I didn't know it, was just to protect myself. And when I learned the values and the morals that I had deep within, I learned that it resonated more with the feminine side.
Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been amazing talking to you ladies. So for me personally, the way that I was raised in a traditional immigrant family, both of my parents have PhDs, but my mom also cooked and took care of the family, and that's the example that I had. So you can be academic and, like me, been corporate since college, but what really changed for me is I did not realize how masculine I had become. And I work with a lot of masculine women in tech, and I did not want to become that. And what it took was having a failed marriage to show me that, you know what, the skills that help you outside in the corporate world can hurt your relationship. So for me, second time around, I got on the program that fast. I have a very masculine man, and what he says is, Maggie, tell the ladies that you're already feminine. You just have to stop fighting it. And we've talked a lot about power, and I believe femininity is our superpower.
I grew up in the 50s and so was married in early 60s. And it was the women's movement that saved my marriage. I had a husband who really changed at that time with what was happening. He got on board and we raised the kids together. And as a result of that, I see that as a sort of liberating time. And I do feel that it's important that everybody be out there and make a statement, because if we aren't in it together, it's not going to happen alone. It happens as a community.
Do you believe that every woman should be a feminist?
I think every woman who thinks about who she is a feminist. You'd have to not understand society and your role in it, and where the shoe pinches and where it doesn't, and how to remake yourself, to make yourself comfortable, and with an eye of how to share this with your community. And I think sharing with the community is extremely important. I don't think it's a personal or isolated thing.
Michelle?
Femininity became important for me when I was realizing that I did want a marriage and a relationship for myself. My mother and father were never married on and off kind of throughout my childhood. I have an amazing relationship with both. That's not the issue. But just, ultimately, what kind of life did I want to live? What kind of man am I actually attracted to and want to be with? And so femininity became important because I had a lot of masculine traits that were being exemplified within the relationship, and now it's very combative and toxic within my relationship. And we categorize these terms feminine, masculine, just as context, so we can understand what it is that we're talking about. But those feminine traits of just, allowing a man to lead, or, living in my nurturing, soft spirit. So, it just became important for me to actually build a life and a relationship that I wanted to live.
Judith?
Oh gosh, so I don't even get the conflict, to be truthful with you. I was born a woman and I'm feminine, that's all. That's just life,
Okay.
And I'm feminine if I have a hammer in my hand and I'm putting up drywall. And I'm feminine if I'm holding one of my babies. I found it difficult in the working world to balance that, but I also found that power has to be defined by me and how I present it. So it can be laughter, it can be easy, it can be tough. If you think you're not a feminist, and I say this to men as well, then I ask you to redefine what you think feminist is. Because feminist is what I said. We all deserve the best. We all deserve to be equal. And when we start doing that, won't it be funny how the people who have all the money and are stopping us from having unions and good workforces and having pay raises and a reasonable minimum wage, if we aren't fighting each other, we might just fight them. So my recommendation, ladies, you are all feminist. Encourage that in everyone and vote.
So I would say that I have always been a feminine person. I grew up in a very traditional household. My parents have been married for 31 years, and my mom is a stay-at-home mom. So I always had that modeled for myself. It's just been interesting because I am also an extremely ambitious person. So I was like, whoa, what does that look like? How do I balance that? So I'm really all for finding the delicate balance of what works for me. I just know that in certain time periods, like you guys were both sharing, you can have it all, but not all at the same time. So right now I'm in my era of focusing on my career and prioritizing that. And at the time where, God willing, I have children and I'm married, then that portion of my life, I know how I want to run my household. And it is going to look something like what my parents have modeled for me. I enjoy that concept. And at the same time, I know that right now, using my gifts, using my talents, I don't believe that God has given me this personality, this charisma, just for nothing. And so I know that for me in that phase of my life, I want to be able to be selfless and share that with my children. So I am definitely a feminine woman, yes.
So after hearing what everyone has shared, Have any of you ladies decided that you want to cross the bridge from one side to the other?
Ain't no bridge.
Well, there is a bridge because some of you ladies who identify as being feminine and identify as being feminist. But after hearing some of the things that were shared, do you feel that maybe some of those things may be things that you agree with, that maybe you didn't think about before or value before?
Well, it's given me a tremendous insight. I realize where these younger women are coming from, and it's new to me. And I thought, I'm really interested to have heard what they've had to say, and I have to now integrate it into what I and the way I perceive what's happening. So I really appreciate all your comments, and thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm really grateful for the bridge, and I'm grateful to have the perspective of those of you all who gave us the choice. I think that having the opportunity to look at all of the options and choose what's best for me, I'm still 100% feminine and leaning in even more, but I'm so grateful to have this discussion. So thank you.
I think there's definitely more of an overlap than a bridge. Everyone's definitions of feminine and feminism are different, and it's really getting to the root of, like, I think we're all saying the same thing of ultimately love yourself. We're grateful for the choices that we have and getting to exercise those choices, and love yourself and love God and people around you.
I wish it was that simple, but it's not.
This is the beginning.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening and just taking these conversations in, and I hope that all of you watching can also take note of the things that were shared and leave comments below about what you thought of this episode. Thank you so much for watching.